Good afternoon, friends, and welcome back to Tactics Board. Today we're previewing Norwich City's second game of their championship season, where they'll face Southampton at St Mary's. And although it was a very encouraging start to the season with a 2-1 win over Hull and Adam Ida's last-minute winner, and there were a lot of really encouraging things in there, this does look like it's going to be a very different game. Norwich tactically and technically looked very, very good in that game against the Tigers, but I think the way that this game pans out will probably tell us a little bit more about Norwich's season, because Southampton are a side that like to dominate possession. They're obviously expected to be in and around that race for promotion to the Premier League. Obviously, former Norwich captain Russell Martin in charge there, and he's already building a very trademark style. So how Norwich combat that should be very different to how they deal with Hull, who were probably more content to sit back. And although I don't think they did it especially well, they tried to just sit in a block and stop Norwich passing through the thirds. Southampton won't do that, so it will be a very different game. And I'm going to take you through how I think it's going to pan out, as well as David Wagner's team that I expect him to pick. So I'm going to get stuck straight into that. This is the team that I think Wagner will choose for the game. So I've got Angus Gunn in goal, Jack Stacey at right back, Shane Duffy and Ben Gibson at centre back, Dimitris Yunus at left back, Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean in midfield, Jonathan Rowe at left wing, Christian Fassnacht at right wing, and then Ashley Barnes just slightly behind Josh Sargent up front. I'll start from the back, and not really much discussion to be had about Angus Gunn. He's been Norwich's number one for a really significant amount of time now, even though David Wagner did introduce Tim Krul back into the team when he was initially appointed. I don't think there's been any question for the last couple of years really as to who's going to get the nod, and I think he'll continue. It wasn't required too much in that win over Hull, but made one very, very good save and proved that even when Norwich are dominating games, he can stay concentrated and he can produce those moments, and that probably won't be the task for him this week. As I already spoke about, Southampton are going to be a side that looks to create chances and looks to dominate the game, so I expect him to make more saves, but that is still his game, and I expect to see him between the sticks. Jack Stacey at right back, not much choice there. Now it looks like Max Aarons is off to Bournemouth. Obviously Kellen Fisher has impressed, but I think Stacey was so good in that win over Hull that you can't really question his place in the team, and he just suits David Wagner's system so well. He plays so high up, and that really does suit him. A good ball into the box, a fantastic first touch that really allows him to take down those diagonal balls, and those diagonal balls are such a feature of Wagner's play that the fullbacks do need to have that technical ability so that they can work with that, and Stacey's certainly got enough to do that. So I expect him to start. Shane Duffy I've got on the right side of the centre-back partnership, and I did think about changing it. Obviously, Androm Bamidele replaced Ben Gibson late on in that game, and the pair were responsible for quite an embarrassing concession for that goal, but they were solid throughout a lot of pre-season, and I thought they actually performed well aside from that one moment. Duffy looks like a threat from set pieces. He got his head to a good number in that whole game. Probably needs to improve his quality there. I think he had a couple of chances that he felt, and I felt, he probably should have been doing slightly better with. But yeah, he looks like a threat, and he looks like somebody that suits David Wagner's system. Gibson, probably more question marks over, and I think if you asked any Norwich fan, they'd probably agree with that. But organisationally, he's very good. Structurally, he fits in very well, and he's good at those sort of traditional defensive things like blocking and clearing. And I think in this Southampton game, when Norwich might be under the cosh quite often, that probably does suit the team. So I expect to see them start, but I wouldn't be surprised if Androm Bamidele does get thrown in there instead of Gibson. At left back, Dimitris Yunus, whose position I don't really see being questioned. I know there were a lot of times when he didn't really perform last season. He didn't look like he had a lot of confidence, but he was in a team that was really struggling to produce performances and results. And when he's been in a good Norwich team and had good players around him that are doing well, he's done really well, and he's been one of the standouts. You look at the sort of first 6 months he had at the club when Norwich was storming to the title, and as easy as it is to perform in that side, it wasn't like he was just one of 11. He was actually a real key catalyst, and he was bombing forward and really helping Norwich in that way. And I think he can do the same thing for Wagner this season. As I said about Stacey, the fullbacks are so important, and his technical ability really is there. And in these sorts of games where it's probably going to be more difficult for Norwich to play through the thirds and create chances through the middle with Gabriel Sara and passes through there, I think players like Yanulis and Stacey, who can get into wide areas where there might be a little bit more space, will really suit Norwich and can do well for them. In midfield, Sara and McLean, a duo which I think was being questioned a significant amount actually going into that first game and throughout pre-season, and that's probably fair because there's no sort of traditional number 6 or midfield destroyer in there to protect the back four, but they just seem to have that function. And Wagner obviously is a good coach and seems to have got the best out of that duo, and he seems to know how to turn that into a functioning unit even without the traditional sort of number 6. Sara played one absolutely lovely pass through for Ono Hernandez, and he can be probably a significant contributor to that creativity that Norwich looked like they lacked last season. And although I don't think he's Emi Buendia, I don't think he's going to be creating 3 clear chances every game. I think he can probably produce 1 or 2, and he has got those moments in the locker. So I think those two are actually going to be 2 of Norwich's key players this season, and I don't see them being dropped. On the left, I've got Jonathan Rowe, and this sort of winger department is where I think there's most likely to be the changes, but Rowe certainly isn't going to be dropped unless we go down to Colney later today and find out that he's been injured. But it was a fantastic performance for him. First game of the season, obviously a great goal, and just overall he looked really good. I have got him on the left because Fassnacht has pretty much throughout his career and in the pre-season games he played for Norwich featured on the right. I think Rowe even came over to the left when he was introduced the other day against Hull. But I think Rowe actually really contributed very well to that link up with Stacey, and he really helped him thrive. So I think that would be a shame to actually see them separated after they clearly had a relationship that worked very well in that whole game. But I think in order to get Fassnacht into the team, which I think Wagner will try to do for reasons I'll come on to in a second, I think Rowe probably has to go out to that left. And he does have a game that suits both sides really. His left foot is strong, he likes cutting in anyway onto his right foot. So that seems like something that makes sense. And I've got Fassnacht on the right because I just don't think Ono Hernandez really made any sort of impression in that whole game. He was the only player, I would say, in the 11, and maybe even in the subs that came on, that actually I thought had a bad game. I don't know what happened because it was the first game of the season. He should be thriving on that atmosphere and he should be raring to go, but he just seemed quite tired and he seemed very pleased to just lay the ball off, whereas we're so used to seeing him driving at defenders. And I don't know if that was an instruction thing. Maybe it was exactly what Wagner wanted and that's why he'll be in the team. But I get the impression it was just quite a poor game from him. And when you've got a marquee signing like Fassnacht waiting in the wings, quite literally, I think you struggle if you're Ono Hernandez. And I can see him Fassnacht starting. Equally, after the performance it produced, maybe tactically there are some things that Wagner saw that he doesn't think can be replicated without Hernandez. Obviously Norwich are going to play on the counter-attack probably more often, and I would say Hernandez is a bit more of your direct pacey winger than Fassnacht. But I think just based on momentum and performance, and how much trust Wagner appears to have in Fassnacht from how he's spoken about him so far, I do expect to see him start in Saturday's game. And then up front I've got Barnes and Sargent, and Ida's goal does sort of throw a spanner in the works because it looked like they were so far ahead of him in the pecking order, and at least for the first few weeks it was going to be easy to pick these striker positions. Then they have, I would say, 2 games that were maybe indifferent. They obviously contributed and they pressed well, but I think Sargent missed a few chances. Barnes wasn't on the ball as much as he was in pre-season. And it did probably leave the door slightly open, and then Ida obviously goes and scores that winner in the 96th minute, and it does leave Wagner with a decision to make. But I think general play-wise, Ida didn't really contribute anything. It is one moment, and as much as it can hopefully contribute to his confidence, I don't think it was any evidence that tactically he's now the ideal person to be in the Norwich setup. I think for now, until he keeps producing these moments, which is what we hope he does, and he hasn't really put that consistency together yet, and until he does that, I do see Barnes and Sargent still as the duo. So I've got them up front, and that's how I sort of see things panning out. I think it's going to be probably a more difficult day for Norwich than it was on Saturday, and although it was only 2-1, they probably deserved to win by a wider margin, and I think it will be a much closer game, this one, but it should be a good measuring stick for where Norwich are, because as much as the expectation probably isn't on them from outside, internally they're still targeting promotion, and David Wagner would still like to be in that mix. So if they can compete well with Southampton, it's going to be another sign that they've improved and that they can potentially be in that race. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do it. We'll have plenty of other stuff across the Pink 'Un channels going into the game. We'll have the preview show, the press conference that we'll be at later today. So keep it across our channels, not only here on YouTube and the Pink 'Un Plus app, but also on pinkun.com, where there'll be live blogs of the press conference and all sort of lead up. If you haven't yet subscribed to Pink 'Un Plus, then head over to pinkun.com/subscribe. Fantastic deal, I think, just $2.99 a month once you get paying the full thing. I think maybe right now it's $1.99 for 2 months. I'll have to double check that, but it is whatever price you pay. A very good deal in my humble and quite biased opinion, but just give it a try, see what you think. Plenty of good stuff on there, and I will see you here very soon. Let's hope Norwich can produce a similar quality of performance that they did against Hull on the road at Southampton.